Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Terry Hartman, and I would like to welcome you to Historic Mission Control. Now, before I go on with my briefing this morning, or this afternoon, I should say, NASA's asked me to make a security announcement, which is simply this. If we have to vacate this room in this building, we're going to ask you to just simply go back down the way you came up, down the stairs or elevator, out the door, back to the tram, and await further instructions. If for some reason we cannot use that stairwell, there's an exit right here, one right over here. We're going to ask you to quietly go out those doors, assemble in the lobby area behind us back here, and await instructions from me. If you have special needs, I'm going to ask you to stay with me. Everything will be just fine. Well, now that we have that out of the way, welcome to MOCR 2. Mission Operations Control Room 2 is what this room was referred to back during the Apollo era. However, those of us who worked here, we simply referred to this room as the green room because, as you can see, all of the consoles in this room are green. And back during that era, we had another room that was the exact duplicate of this one. We used for backup. Also, we used it for special missions. We gave that room the highly scientific name, the brown room, because all the consoles were brown. This is the room, however, that history fell on. We opened this room in 1965. And the first mission control out of this room was a mission called Gemini 4. If you look at that picture right over there, that's what took place during that mission. It was the first time in America's history that an American performed a spacewalk. Today we refer to those as EVAs, or extravehicular activities. And how we got from spacewalk in the 60s to EVAs today, I'm going to let you go home and look that up on the internet. Anyway, the man in that spacesuit, his name is Ed White. Ed was one of the astronauts who was killed in the Apollo 1 fire. Now, we kept this room open and very active until the middle 1990s. Not with this equipment, mind you. In the years between, we handled 9 Gemini missions, all of the Apollo lunar missions, and 21 shuttle missions were controlled out of this room. Then in 1995, we officially retired and decommissioned the room. And at that time, we went to the Smithsonian Aerospace Museum in Washington, D.C. They had been storing all of this equipment for us. We went there, had it all brought back here to Houston, and we put every console, every bookcase, every credenza back exactly where it had been 40 plus years ago. And I can tell you with great assurance that the room looks as it did back then. The only thing missing are quite a few of the people who worked here. And if you look closely at the equipment, you can see we were using state-of-the-art equipment back in those days. Every console has its own little rotary dial telephone. And back in that era, any of us who were on the floor or in the back rooms conducting calculations, each one of us had our own personal handheld, no batteries required computers. They look like this. Slide rules. You know, today when I tell people that we handled all those lunar missions and we utilized these, they just don't believe me. But we did not have computers or calculators to do it. Those were a product of the space program. Back in that era, we had the latest in high-tech communications equipment in order to get messages and data from our main control rooms to our support rooms. I'd like you all to take a look at 1960s email. Yeah, this is how we got data and information from our main control rooms to our support rooms. These carried a lot of data. A few ham and cheese sandwiches. For those of you old enough to remember what a 7-ounce Coke bottle looked like, it fit perfectly in here. You just had to be real careful when you opened it at the receiving end. Folks, back in those days, we had not computers, but terminals. These are television sets. We looked at data and looked at data only. Some of the data we were looking at was hand-rendered, drawn by hand or typed up on a typewriter. Look at the screen to the left, you'll see what I'm talking about. We had no interaction whatsoever with the equipment or the spacecraft like we have in today's modern control rooms. Now what do I mean by that? Look at the monitor there and there. These are two different camera angles of the same room. We call this room the white thicker. The white flight control room, and there are people in that room right now. They're in the middle of a simulation. You see, for the past 60 missions, that's been shuttle mission control. They're in there conducting a simulation for a future shuttle mission. We have a mission launching on Sunday, STS-130. The Endeavour will be leaving Florida at 3:39 in the morning on its way to the space station. And that's control room is right on the other side of the screens that are in front of you, but there's something I wanted to point out here. You see the flight director right there? Her name is Ginger Carrick. Now, when I came up in this business, it was a good old boys club. We now currently have 30 active flight directors, and 10 out of that 30 are females. As I said, Ginger's a good friend. And she knows how to cook. She hit me for saying that. I want to show you another control room real quick. This is Ficker 1. Flight control room 1 is manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, year round. You see, that's the current control room for the International Space Station. We have a crew of 5 up on board that ISS right now. 2 Russian cosmonauts, 2 American astronauts, and 1 Japanese astronaut. And these guys aren't busy. They've got a full daily schedule. Experiments, maintaining equipment, and installing new equipment. They're passengers, guys. That's right. They're along for the ride. That space station's altitude, its attitude, the environmental systems, electrical generation, illumination, power, heating, everything on board that space station is being controlled by the people you see seated at those consoles in that room. And that room is directly below you. It's right underneath us. It used to be called the Brown Room. We're going to take a little tour of this room. I want to point out a few of the locations. We're going to start off, first of all, 2 rows up here where the panel says Flight Director. Now, during a mission, the Flight Director is in total control and thoroughly responsible for the mission. Number 1 priority, safety of the crew. 2, safety and integrity of the spacecraft. 3, complete all of the mission objectives. Now, in order to get that accomplished, during a mission, all of the flight controllers on the floor report to the Flight Director and the hundreds of controllers in support rooms. They also report the flight. The crew on board the spacecraft, that's the boss. Such men as Christopher Kraft, NASA's first flight director, Gene Kranz, Apollo 11 and 13, amongst others. If you look over here at the wall on the left, there are 18 proclamations up on that wall. These are mission statements made by every flight director who worked in this room and called that console the office. Now, right in front of flight, next row up, that's where Capcom sat. Capcom is an acronym for Capsule Communications. And that's a term we still use today in every one of our control rooms. You see, during a mission, there's only one person in mission control who will be in verbal communication with the crew on board. Capcom. And for that reason, Capcom is always an astronaut, talking to fellow astronauts on a mission. Alan Shepard, John Glenn, Wally Schirra, Gordon Cooper, all the original Mercury astronauts, all the way up to today's core of astronauts. It is a job requirement. It comes with a paycheck that every astronaut will spend time seated at